Very good. Well, welcome everybody to our Committee of the Whole meeting today, October 24th of this year. I'll call the meeting to order. Madam Clerk, would you take the roll call, please?
Councillor Mackey.
Good morning, present.
Councillor McKay.
Here.
Councillor Carlton.
Present.
Councillor Pringle sends his regrets. Councillor McQueen. Councillor McQueen is absent. Councillor Nielsen.
Excited to be here.
Councillor Patterson.
Present.
Councillor Dickert.
Present.
Councillor Kentner.
Present.
Councillor Keaveney.
Present.
Councillor Body. Councillor Body is absent. Councillor Gregg.
Present.
Councillor DeBreen.
Present.
Warden Milne.
Present.
Councillor Matrosovs.
Present.
Councillor Bourdignon.
Present.
Councillor Eccles.
Here.
Councillor Hutchinson.
Present, thank you.
Through you, Mr. Warden, I can confirm that we have a quorum of members today with Councillor Body, Councillor McQueen, and Councillor Pringle absent.
Thank you very much, Sarah.
Mr. Warden.
I'm here.
Oh, there's Councillor McQueen. Did someone ask a question or was wanting to ask a question?
Mr. Warden.
Go ahead, Councillor DeBreen.
I just wanted to point out that Councillor McQueen had joined on for Sarah's
Okay,
acknowledgement.
very good. Thank you very much. And I apologize again to the group. My the land acknowledgement, the copy of it, I have misplaced. So gracefully, Sarah has agreed to read the land acknowledgement. Sarah, please.
Yes, through you, Mr. Warden. We acknowledge with respect the history, spirituality, and culture of the Anishinaabe Six Nations of the Grand River, the Haudenosaunee, and the Wendat, Wyandot peoples, on whose traditional territories we gather and whose ancestors signed treaties with our ancestors. We recognize also the Métis and Inuit whose ancestors shared this land and these waters. May we all, as treaty people, live with respect on this land and live in peace and friendship with all its diverse peoples.
Thank you very much, Sarah. Is there any declaration of interest related to any item on today's budget or in today's agenda, rather? Not seeing any. If one should arise during the course of the meeting, you can declare it at that time. So item number 5 is the reason why we're here. It's a pre-budget workshop discussion. So I'm going to turn it over to our CAO Wingrove. She will lead us through the presentation, and then we will have a good discussion, I'm sure. So Kim, welcome. And the floor is yours.
Mr. Warden. Thank you, and good morning, Council. I will ask that Mary Lou can share her screen, and if we go to the second slide, and Council, we will share these budget slides out with you following the meeting today, so you have them as reference. But I wanted to start off by saying thank you to all of you for being available for this special meeting to talk about the 2024 budget. Preparing a county budget is a complex task every year, but this particular year has been especially challenging. Our purpose today is to share with all of you where we've come to so far with budget numbers and with developing the budget, and to seek some feedback, or at least have an opportunity to have a good discussion about where we might go next. All of the senior team, the financial analysts, and especially our treasurer and deputy treasurer, Mary Lou and Sue, have worked very hard to develop the most accurate set of numbers for your review today. However, there are things that we still don't know, and we'll share those with you as we go through the presentation. So in addition to looking at 2024 in the context of the past 4 years, so you have a sense of how the numbers have evolved over the years, we've also provided in this presentation some context that's specific to the 2024 budget, including the new initiatives that are coming onto the budget for the first time, reinstatement of expenditures that had been removed last year from the budget, the various unknowns, risks, and assumptions that go into the preparing the individual departmental budgets, what the impact of inflation is on various aspects of the operation, and what we understand as far as assessment growth. One thing you will notice is rather than talking just in percentages, we've tried to use real numbers where possible to make this information a little more relatable to all of you and to the public. As Mary Lou goes through the presentation, if you have questions of clarification about a particular slide, there's a lot of information on some of these slides. And if you want to just go over something specific, please raise your hand. I'll call on you and we'll get your question answered. But as the wardens indicated, we'd like to save the bigger discussion about how you're feeling about the numbers that you're seeing, areas where you might want more information, how you want to proceed from here. Do we need another meeting? Something like that. We'll save that all to the end of the presentation and have that discussion at that time. Okay. So unless anybody's got a question at this minute, I'll turn it over to Mary Lou to take us through the numbers. Mary Lou?
Thank you very much, Kim. First, I'll just give you a little bit of a background on our path to today. So budget assumptions were developed and provided to departments by finance, HR, and IT. Departments have been meeting with their finance leads since at least August and through September, and for some, depending on when their budget meeting was, into October to develop their budgets. We had approximately 24 budget meetings that were at least 44 hours in total, with departments that started September 25th and ended a week ago today, to review their proposed operating budgets, as well as the 10-year capital forecasts. And the first year of that forecast has been included in the proposed 2024 budget. Just to give some context on Grey County at a glance, we are the third largest by area in the province. We are now over 100,000 in population as of the 2021 census. There's 42,310 households, and that's defined by Statistics Canada as that's your permanent dwelling. The number of private dwellings in Grey County that we're going to use for the purpose of this presentation is 50,183. So that includes seasonal properties. This shows you the net levy breakdown over 5 years by the various departments. So you can see that in 2020, our levy was just under 60 million, and in 2024, it's currently estimated at just under 78 million. When you look at the 5-year allocation of the levy, this shows you by municipality how the levy is apportioned. And keeping in mind that that's based on assessed value, and that is something that is not to the discretion of Grey County. So you can see as different municipalities grow, the shift in the levy changes. It's also important to know that for every $100,000 worth of assessment, the property pays the exact same amount of county tax, regardless of where the residence is. So whether it's in Chatsworth or whether it's in Owen Sound, it pays the same amount of county tax if they were assessed at the exact same amount. The net levy, so this is the cost per private dwelling that I referred to as the 50,183 properties, including seasonal. This shows that in 2020, the net levy required per household was just under $1,200. And in 2024, it's estimated to go up to $1,552. And this shows how the levy is apportioned by the various departments that provide service to our residents. This shows the levy change based on the private dwellings of 50,183. So you can see, for example, in 2023, the levy is per household is $1,355, going to $1,552, which is an increase of $197. And we realize that that isn't based on the assessed value. That's just simply taking the budget, the increase, and dividing it by the number of households in Grey County, because every household pays the property tax regardless of whether they're a seasonal or a permanent resident. Then we get to the net levy requirement. The 2024 levy increase over the 2023 approved budget is $9,979,300. The estimated new assessment growth when we prepared this was just over $1.6 million. Assuming that we continue the ratchet down in the multi-res rate. So if you recall, the 2023 tax policy recommended that we move the multi-res tax ratio to be equal to the new multi-res ratio of 1. So we moved a quarter of the movement in 2023, and we're recommending when we do tax policy next year that we continue that ratchet down by a quarter of a movement. In conversation with the City of Owen Sound, who sets their own tax policy, that's also what they're looking at doing. And it's important that we stay in lockstep with Owen Sound. Otherwise, we don't achieve what we hope to achieve, which is the multi-res and the new multi-res ratios being the same. And again, because Owen Sound sets their own tax policy, there's a difference in the tax ratio adjustment. And that gets us to a budgetary net levy increase, net of new growth, of $8,432,278. So continuing initiatives in the 2024 budget. So there's been a number of things that we began in prior years that still have an impact because there was a phasing of the implementation. So things that have impacted the budget were the finance review that was done in 2020, as well as with HR using modernization funding, and the transportation services review. There's also the climate change action plan, communication strategy, and strategic plan initiatives. And that's just a few of the highlights of things that have been done in the past that help to form the framework for the budget. The budget as it's currently developed includes a restoration of the healthcare funding contribution, and that's 0.75% of the prior year's net levy. And that comes to an increase of $509,500. We have committed $1 million over 5 years to Bright Shores, with the first $200,000 contribution being made in 2023. That leaves the healthcare funding reserve at the end of 2023 with $209,000 remaining. So there's a contribution of $200,000 to Bright Shores in the 2024 budget. The affordable housing contribution, as part of the strategy in order to reduce the impact for 2023, that contribution was reduced and it was flatlined at the amount that we budgeted for 2022. If we wish to increase that contribution to 1% of the prior year's net levy, the budget impact is $25,100. And next, Sue's going to take us over a few slides.
So we have some new initiatives within our 2024 budget. We have included a transfer to reserve for the Rockwood Terrace, which is $600,000. You were also presented this year with the paramedic services operational review. So that has been costed out and has been increased to the budget of $489,400. The Information Technology Strategic Plan was also provided to you this year, and there has been an impact to the budget as well this year. At the time we did the slide, we didn't quite have the dollar value, but we're estimating it to be about 120,000. And then our Director of HR, Jen Moreau, presented not that long ago, middle of September, the implementation of the new human capital management software. And in that, in this year's budget should be $160,000 levy impact. And we do have some within our budget recommended increase to our staff complement as well. And now I'll get into the unknown risks and assumptions within our budgets. Our OCIF funding, in this year, we had to submit to the ministry a current replacement value template, which will help to drive our allocation this year of the OCIF funding. And it could swing, could be a plus or minus 15%. We have assumed in our budget this year that it will stay the same. So that could be an increase of 456,000 or a decrease. So we're hopeful that we'll at least stay static. The Canada Community Benefit Fund, formerly known as gas tax, which is what I still refer to as, actually our agreement ends December 31st, 2023. So we have assumed that our funding levels will stay the same. We did actually have a communication last week indicating that there will be agreement letters effective April 1st. And we are hopeful that we will know our allocation early December or sometime late December, early next year. So that's another risk for us. And within our long-term care complement, there's a couple of risks and external funding we just aren't aware of yet. So as Mary Lou has explained in the past, we do have a case mix index, which drives some funding within our long-term care. That we don't know how it will happen. It runs, we know what it'll be January, February, March. April to December is still unknown. Our staff have used Advantage Ontario has a tool which allows us to estimate what our case CMI will be for 2024. So that is what we have used to drive our budget in this year. There also is a direct care staffing supplement allocation, which has a significant range of values, but we don't know. It could range from $1,305 to $1,754 per resident or per bed per month. We have a budget on the lower end of that for this year's budget. And the other unknown is we still have not heard on our construction subsidy for Rockwood Terrace yet. So fingers crossed on that one. In our paramedic services, we have requested additional base funding for our paramedics and SOS programs. But at this time, we do not know if we'll be getting that request. And we also have a lack of ministry inflationary funding for our 911 funded program. So as we can imagine, our inflationary goes up and we're not seeing an increase from our provincial funding in that envelope. In our provincial offenses, we're seeing a decrease in revenue as well as a shift in responsibilities back onto Grey County staff. And in our transit funding, there is no provision within our current agreement that allows us for any inflationary increases. And that funding envelope ends March 31st, 2025. In our children's services envelope, there will be a new funding model for 2024. We still have not seen what that will look like or how it will impact us. So we have assumed that we will keep the same base level of funding as we received in 2023. We do know that our Interior Works funding has decreased $163,800, so our budget has reflected that decrease. And within the health unit, there has been some changes on how the allocation and the budget has been split. I did reach out to the senior manager of finance out at the health unit. So originally, a couple of years ago, the funding was supposed to change to a 70 provincial split to a 30% municipal split. And at that point, they provided some mitigation funding. And at that point, we were estimating the impact could be over 600,000. Now the province has gone back to a 75-25 split. But they're keeping the mitigation funding envelope that they have, and they're increasing their base by 100%. So we have estimated and confirmed that based on what the health unit has been provided from their ministry, an impact of $315,300 to our current 2024 budget. And our Business Enterprise Center, this funding envelope that we have currently ends March 31st, 2024. We have assumed that we are hopeful that this budget will continue past March 31st. So, and if we don't get that funding, that is $140,000 impact into the 2024 budget.
Thanks, Sue. This slide is talking about the impact on the budget with inflation. So you can see over the course of the 5 years, the percentage increase we're seeing in inflation. The annual inflation increase, for 2023 is 4.12%. 2022 was higher. The CPI, that's no surprise for anybody who's buying food. I had a friend message me a couple weeks ago with a screenshot saying, when did butter go to $9.29 and how did I not know this? The non-residential builds CPI, we use this to index our development charges as well as to estimate building costs. And you can see the steady increase, 2020, it was quite minimal. 2021, 2022, and up to the second quarter of 2023, it has leveled off some. But these are all drivers in what happens with our budgets. This slide was provided by Transportation Services, and it's very interesting to look at the asphalt cement price index in 2020 versus 2023. So a 63% increase, or a 17.7% compounded per year. And when you look at fuel, it was 89 cents a liter, and when this slide was done, it was $1.50. And I think we all remember that diesel used to be cheaper than gas, and now it's not. Trevor's provided the project unit rates for pulverizing and paving projects. In 2020, it was $375,000 per kilometer. 2023, $520,000 per kilometer. So a 39% increase. So it just means the money we have is not going as far as it once did. So for the impacts on the 2024 budget, this is talking about the people portion. So the cost of living or COLA increase that's been budgeted. Recently, it was just last month, the Director of HR, Jen Moreau, brought the non-union market results and the pay equity adjustments. We don't know what the benefit plan renewal will be. That we don't get that till April, so we've made best estimates. We have collective agreements, some are ratified, and there's some that are to be negotiated that expire at the end of December. The annualized full-time equivalents. So in 2023, if we knew that a position wouldn't be filled January 1st, we only budgeted for part of the year. So then the remainder of that impact hits the 2024 budget. There are proposed new full-time equivalents. The same thing has been done. They're not budgeted for a full 12 months. And then 2024 is leap year. And I know leap year is just one more day, but it especially impacts the 24/7 operations.
Mary Lou, you might want to just for interest's sake, maybe share with council what we believe the cost of an extra day is.
Sure. It is just shy of $200,000. When we look at budget risks and assumptions for other things, our insurance renewal is January 1st. We've estimated based on historical increases. When we get into housing, they get their renewal in the fall, and they already know what theirs is, and it's substantially higher than what it has been in the past. The working group looking at the road exchanges, there is nothing reflected in the 2024 budget to take into account any transfers in the year. The budget has been based on the expectation the reduction of the provincial fuel tax will continue. So that's something the Ford government implemented, in its reduction of 6.4 cents per liter. That expires January 1st, 2024, and there's been no announcement if that will continue. We're still estimating growth up to the end of this month for the 2024 budget documents. And I've mentioned the multi-res tax ratio earlier, and looking at when we do the tax policy early next year to recommend a further quarter movement. And I'll turn that one over to Sue.
So we've mentioned assessment growth a couple of times. We have had our manager of revenue sort of monitoring this weekly. And as we kind of get closer to the cutoff date from MPAC, he looks at it a little bit more recently. So based on the timing, we did this last Friday, our growth number was 1.6 million and change. We've talked about the estimated multi-res impact as well. And a 1% increase in our levy at that time was 694,600. We did look yesterday, and we've actually increased our growth by about 76,000 over last Friday. So it can vary from day to day, and how quickly MPAC can get their information updated. MPAC will start to cut off their role assessment. So let me look at my charts. October 27th, they stop their keying, and then we will then be able to base between November 6th and December 1. That's when the MPAC numbers will remain static from what we can see, and then eventually we will get the tax assessment roll available to us. But unfortunately, based on the timing of our budget meetings and our original proposed budget timelines, we will have to use an estimate, because we won't know our full growth impact, to prepare budget documents for you in December. And the next slide just kind of shows you a historical picture of our growth. So the good news story here is that our growth is actually a little bit higher than it was last year. So it's a decent number. And I was kind of not expecting it to get higher than last year. I was hopeful we'd stay the same as last year. So that just kind of gives you a picture of our assessment growth over the last 10 years. And this percentage is an impact of the total levy change. So if you go back to, when you get these slides back to slide 5, our net levy, this just shows you a percentage of the net levy by department and the change over the 5 years. So you can see where the proportion of the levy has changed over the last 5 years. And I'll turn it back over to Mary Lou.
Thanks. So to recap, where we've talked previously that our levy increase is 9,979,300 less the growth, which is a bit different based on the information we got yesterday versus the slides we have today, that shows a budgetary net of new growth of $8,432,278. And when Sue talked about the growth had gone up yesterday, I guess as a note of caution, we still have a bit of time left to see what the final numbers are. But we could see a swing going the opposite way too if they process something that's a reduction. And so that brings us to a net budgetary increase of over the 2023 approved budget of 12.12%. When we look at the impact to the property tax classes, because residential is the bulk of our assessment, that's where the bulk is going to hit. And then you can see that the next highest is commercial, and then farm, then industrial, et cetera. So you see that out of the total levy raised, 81.62 is residential. We want to look at it another way. We haven't had reassessment since 2016. So the average assessed single detached home, not on water in Grey County, is $290,000. So as I mentioned previously, regardless of where that home is, it pays the same amount of county tax. So the county tax in 2023 on that average home is $1,102.53. The proposed budget shows it would be $1,236.75, which is an increase of $134.22. And then down below, we've shown the average assessment in our member municipalities, and we've put it from lowest to highest. And showing again what the county levy was for 2023 versus 2024 and how much that is an increase. The next steps. Budgets will be finalized and published on the county website December 1st. We move into our first budget meeting December 8th. And you'll remember that you haven't seen 10-year capital yet. So 10-year capital and the annual budget have been rolled into combined meetings, with the first year of the 10-year capital forecast being included in the 2024 proposed budget. The second budget meeting will be December 15th. And assuming that we come to a consensus at that date, and there's a motion passed to approve the budget, we would bring the budget bylaw back to you on January 11th. And then we will bring tax policy and pass a policy by the end of March. And I'll turn it over for questions and I'll stop screen sharing.
So thank you, Mary Lou. And there's a lot of numbers on those slides, some of them alarming, some of them not so alarming, or not as alarming as you might think they should be or could be. But nonetheless, I think what we're hoping today is not to get down into the weeds too much and focus on sort of the high level stuff of what we see and what we see happening. So, Councillor McQueen.
Thank you, Mr. Warden. And I just wanted to sort of say that thanks to Mary Lou and staff for providing that overview, because there's a lot of information in there that helps us communicate to the ratepayers itself, because this example, like fuel and cement costs and asphalt costs, I mean, those are things that are out of our control, but just unbelievably, you know, with cement costs 63% over those number of years, is not, you know, it's just, we know when you get a load of concrete how much it costs, but still, just to think that how much costs, just with you know, and we know food and other things are up, but it helps us. I'm just saying, it's a lot of that information. It's almost like a pocket thing we carry around with us, because it does share a lot of information of the things that are happening, and you know, the general ratepayer, taxpayer doesn't understand that, and it just, I think it's good takeaway. And so again, thanks to staff for bringing that forward.
Thank you, Paul. Any other questions? Councillor McKay.
Yes, thank you. I think staff has done an excellent job. There's a lot of facts and figures there that we have to try to get our head around. And I think after last year, when we tried to keep it under control, I think we all kind of realized that this year there's going to be a difficulty in keeping the tax rate to, I don't know, a suitable level, because I think every resident in Grey County must realize that everything's going up in price. They see that every day when they go out on the street. So once again, I think it's a wonderful job that staff has done, and I still think there'd be a lot of questions and answers and whatever we have to do yet. So thank you very much.
Thank you, Terry. Councillor Keaveney.
Thank you, Mr. Warden, and also my appreciation to Mary Lou and her team. I just wondered, Mary Lou, if you could share with the council a little bit more information, if you can, in relation to Rockwood Terrace build. On the slide, it mentioned that construction top-up funding was not available or included. We don't know if that's going to be approved or not, and I'm just curious to know if it is. Do Do we have any idea when we might know that and what difference that might make?
Mary Lou?
For you, Mr. Warden. Director Jennifer Cornell has advised that the ministry says that they're working on it actively and there will be an announcement shortly. What shortly means, I don't know. They keep telling us, for example, that OCIF, the announcement will be out this fall, and please keep in mind that fall runs until December 21st.
Shortly generally means any day now.
As, if I can
Yep,
just add.
Absolutely, please.
The impact that it would have, our understanding is that what the province is doing is looking at that it's the additional top up that we're talking about, right? Like, we know what the construction funding subsidy is, and that hasn't changed now it's been a couple of years. But then in November, when they announced that additional kind of construction acceleration fund, which, if memory serves, was going to benefit us to the tune, Mary Lou, I'm thinking $30-ish million. What the work that we understand the province is doing right now is to revisit the figures that went into determining what the value was for that top up, to ensure that they weren't, that, you know, they were treating everyone fairly, if I will. The people who received that top up earlier weren't either receiving an advantage that the next group wouldn't, or weren't being shortchanged. So they're trying to, I think, establish what a consistent level of top up would be. At least that's what it was explained to me. But it's such a challenging time because the numbers keep changing kind of as quick as you think you've got them sorted. You know, you get another month's worth of inflation numbers or something, and which means that, you know, you have to readjust. We've supplied information to the province on a number of occasions about where our project is and the size of it and what it's going to cost, etc. So we've tried to contribute as best we can to ensuring that our interests are accurately represented. But we wait now.
Any other questions? Councillor Greg.
Thanks, Warden. I'm going to take a little bit of a contrarian view to my colleagues to this point. These are astounding numbers, albeit I'm not surprised at all. I think through the year, we tend to look at a lot of projects in a bit of a siloed approach, or in a little bit of in isolation in terms of how they may relate to the grand picture in terms of how it is going to impact the overall budget. So I'm not at all surprised where we landed. I was certainly concerned with what we may see today. Numbers like this, I would have preferred to have had the presentation sent out in advance, actually, and not just try to follow it as we're flipping through slides, because there's a lot of numbers and it's pretty challenging, I think, for anyone to be able to work their way through that instantaneously. We cannot land anywhere close to that kind of an increase. Everyone understands the prices went up, but at the same time, a lot of people's ability to afford those kind of rate increases has also decreased in relation to how much their outlay is in terms of mortgage or auto loans or butter, as was stipulated today. People have to eat, people have to shelter. So we're going to have to take a real hard look at the services that we're providing, at projects that we have ongoing. We, in the past, I'm just a year in, so I've sat back and watched now for the first year. I don't think we had a whole lot of insight in terms of the actual work plans, perhaps by department. We're going to have to do a better job, I hope, of having more insight into those work plans for 2024 and having council guide those work plans in terms of budgetary allowances or allotments to different initiatives. I understand today's not the day to delve into it, nor should it be, because we just don't have the information in front of us, but we're gonna have to have it well explained. Any new recommendation to onboard new staff. And in fact, I would like or appreciate more background in terms of the departmental staff load of the last 2 terms of council, in terms of where we're at now. So those are just a couple of my comments. When we meet back, I guess in December, as intrigued as I am as to how we got to 14.5% increase year over year, and that's in the total levy increase. I would be just as willing to work hard at, evaluating a total levy increase of 5%. And then it's on council to go item by item in terms of what staff would say, this is what you're sacrificing. Are you okay with that? Because council needs to make tough decisions, and I would welcome a whole breadth of information to come forward in the next 5 weeks to help shed some light on the services that we're providing and the initiatives that we're undertaking.
Thank you, Scott. Kim.
So just in one point that I would like to clarify, we have talked in the past about multi-year budgeting, and that multi-year budget for operating and capital, we've been doing multi-year for a number of years now, but multi-year operating budgets, I think, would make a tremendous difference for council to be able to see, as we set the budget each year, what the impact will be on future year operating budgets. We do the kind of the best that we can to speak to that, but I think to be able to see it in a fulsome and complete way would be so beneficial, not only to staff, but to each of you around the table. As far as work plans go, there is nothing that staff do here that isn't included in the previous year's budget, that didn't have a staff report associated with it. We are, we understand the difficulty, and I think like the amount of work that's gone into trying to determine what options we have that would be simple or easy. There's been a lot of time spent on that. I think there comes a time, and perhaps this is what you're alluding to, Councillor Greg, where you have to take a step back and say, are there things that we simply can't continue with anymore because the resources just aren't there. I will remind council that the levy, so what you're seeing this time as a levy ask of nearly $78 million, comes in the context of an overall budget of what are we, Mary Lou, 235, 232? Do you have that number? Mm-hmm. So the levy portion is just the portion that, we have some control over. And even of that levy portion, only some of that are we able to actually take decisions on and decide to reduce or redirect, because a portion of that levy is the portion of the spending that we're required by the province or by the federal government to contribute to the provision of those services. So even of this significant number that we're looking at, we don't even have control over all of that. So, there's perhaps a discussion that could be had about, breaking out the levy ask into things that we can decide to do differently and things we cannot.
Thank you, Kim. Councillor Body.
Thank you, Warden Milne.
we're talking over 10%, we're talking drastic. You know, that's big changes that I don't think is going to be acceptable to the public, as Councillor Gregg has said, when their butter's going up and everything else is going up. You know, people that bought new homes 5 years ago are now amortizing them over 45 and 47 years, so they don't get kicked out, where traditionally it was always 25. So I think we need to take some hard looks and go with a new approach. Something that we did at the city starting last year is we started off with the bare bones things that we have to do. You know, optional, we've committed to the hospital to give them X number of dollars, so that isn't really an option because we've committed. Putting a percent into housing, which is really for ourselves, we're committed to, but it's really to ourselves, so that's sort of optional that we should be relooking. What I would suggest, and this is what we've done at the city, is give us a bare bones budget when we come back, and then give us the options on top of that. So if we start with, you know, what does 5% get us? And it may not be much, but then add options for each thing and what's the increase going to be, and let us pick where we go. So, you know, traditionally Stafford presented a budget at 12%, and we've had to be the ones to try and go through and cut it down. I think there's doing it the opposite way of what's the bottom line, where can we start, and then we choose the options that we add to it instead of cutting to it would be a much better way to go for council to be able to consider. It's slightly different than the way we've ever done it, but when we're talking about those increases, we've got to do it differently, and we've got to look at everything pretty hard. Thanks.
Thanks, Ian. Kim, do you want to respond to that, or?
Just only to say that at the end of our discussion, if that's the direction that council would like, I think we need to have another meeting, and we need to spend some time with the implications of that. I think it's important for council to know too that a significant part of the county's operations is focused on people helping people. Half of our staff are in long-term care. The other chunk is paramedic services, and a significant part of this increase has to do with staffing costs. And so if we are going to have to, if you're going to make a significant difference to this budget, we are going to have to really delve into the people portion of the operation. And I think we'll need to be in camera to have some of those discussions, if that's okay. That's all I wanted to say.
Thank you, Kim. Councillor Nielsen.
Thank you, Warden. Just a question for Mary Lou. Sometimes seeing a percentage doesn't help actually understand what we're talking about. Can you help me understand what is the dollar figure? Are you talking $40 a month, $50 a month? Like, what is the difference on the average tax base? And I know when we're talking average home size, it doesn't really equate well, but it helps give us a better picture of what's the, you know, people always break down to that's 3 cups of coffee a day is all you need to cover this cost. Like, so what are we looking at?
Mary Lou.
For you, Mr. Warden. So the slide talking about the impact by municipality, if it was,
You want to show 26 again? Show slide 26 again?
yeah. There we go. So the average in Grey County that's assessed at $290,000. The increase is $134. Now the total levy. So if I took the 134 and divided by 366 days, it's $37 a day. That's the increase. Now the total county levy of $1,236.75 divided by 366 days is $3.38 a day. And of course, you know, that's using an average at 290. So somebody that's above the 290 is paying more. Somebody that's below the 290 is paying less. But that's how it's shown. And keeping in mind a 1% increase right now is calculated at just under $695,000.
Thank you, Mary Lou. Any other questions? And if I'm not seeing, oh, there, Councillor Matrosovs.
Thank you. Through you, the chair. I have as many questions about the intake, the money coming in as the money going out. So I am definitely, as Councillor Body had suggested, if there are other avenues to explore, I am in favor of as many meetings as it takes to be able to look into all of our possibilities and compensate for the lag that we keep receiving from the province, particularly with the impact assessment. It's killing us. This is just, so I have a meeting with MPP Saunderson coming up. I'm wondering if any of my counterparts have meetings coming up with your MPP. And the more we're speaking in unison, the more we're emphasizing the kind of pressure that we're under because of the provincial changes in terms of funding, as well as the slow time on MPAC. What can we do? Does the county have a meeting set up to discuss budgetary needs and strains with the province as well? That would be my question to you, Warden, as well as my colleagues.
Thank you, Andrea. And to date, there are no, to my knowledge, I don't have any meetings planned. And quite frankly, if I have to tell our MPP that we're under inflationary pressure, then our MPP is sorely misinformed. But nonetheless, you're absolutely right. A meeting to drive that point home probably would be a good thing. And it leads me into a point that I was going to make earlier is don't forget the number of some of the programs that we are currently running for the province via funding from the province. There's no inflationary credit in any of those funding envelopes. And so, you know, it's fine to say that, yeah, we're under pressure here, but why are we the ones that are getting yelled at? Figuratively, of course, when the province is the one that is shortchanging us because they're not keeping up with inflation with the funding that they're providing to us. So point taken, Andrea, and I'll seek a meeting with our MPP Rick Byers to drive that point home. Thank you. Any other questions, discussion? I'm not seeing any hands. It's a lot to take in, granted. And as Kim indicated, the slides will be provided to everybody at the end of this meeting.
Councillor Nielsen.
Oh, thank you. Dane, please.
Thank you, Warden. Just to, I think, Kim, if you don't want to answer this one. So there's discussion now about having another meeting, and there was a slide, forgive me, all the slides are blurring because you're as everybody's trying to see lots of numbers and trying to absorb them. If we're looking at another budget meeting, what is the speed at which we're going to try and get into that? I know we're going to get sent these slides, but then very quickly these slides will become outdated as staff are changing the numbers, or we're having some discussion on bare bones versus options versus, you know, what we can touch, what we can't touch. So I'm just wondering what the timeline changes with, you know, seems like a few different voices are saying we're looking at another meeting here.
Kim?
Yes, well, I think just we do need to keep this moving forward. And while scheduling is always a challenge, I'm thinking that, you know, we would probably want to be able to sit down with you again within 2 weeks so that we can, I think the way forward perhaps might be to, like cost out some options. So rather than bringing back a budget, we can talk about scenarios where this would be the impact of this particular scenario or this particular scenario. I'm I'm very conscious of the comments made by Councillors Boddy and Greg about wanting to understand these are the aspects of the county's budget which we're required to provide. And so then separating those things out from other initiatives or services that the county currently provides in response to demand from the public and to the benefit of our communities. So we can work our way through that. This is really our top priority right now. So I'd be looking to schedule that. Mary Lou, are you okay if I say within a couple of weeks, we'll come back again with a few things? These are just discussions. Nothing's going to be to the penny, but we can at least give you a sense of what opportunities and challenges we have.
Thank you, Kim.
Absolutely. Finance is keen as well to keep this moving.
Very good. Thank you, Mary Lou. Councillor Eccles.
Thank you, Warden Millen. The numbers are scary, certainly in itself. Been to a number of conferences and meetings, and matter of fact, I'm sitting in one right now. Stepped away yesterday. A lot of numbers were out on inflation and where we're going with inflation and how close we are to being in a recession. I think to Councillor Gregg and Councillor Boddy, maybe to Councillor Matrozoff as well too. It's fine to get to that point, and I think Councillor Gregg put it. Always on a budget, we've got to get to where a target is. I'm not certain that what was it, Mary Lou, 12.12 by the time we took in growth, and whether we have all the growth in there, whether we don't. Have we projected what inflation truly is, or what we maybe think it's going to be in 2024? There's some numbers in there that can certainly be changed, but I'd like to see, if we come back in 2 weeks' time, or maybe if we even have it under new business, just as something on Thursday, where is the target? If we don't have a target, what are we shooting for? We can go around in circles, not for 2 weeks, not for 10 days, or 2 months. If we don't have a target of what we're trying to get down to, then we're certainly at a loss of staff trying to find what we can get to. And it does worry me continuously. If we come in at 12.12% increase, how much are we adding to inflation? We are the inflation then to the taxpayer and to our constituents and to our customers. Look forward to some very interesting comments and options that will be put forward to us, and to the hard decisions that are going to have to be made on those options coming up in the next 2 weeks. We can't wait much longer than that. Thank you.
Thank you, Kevin. And if I could just venture a point, and to Councillor Eccles's point about the target, I guess a lot of us, and I probably don't need to tell this group this, but a lot of us, myself included, and in Southgate, we have been traditionally, you throw out that target of whatever percentage you think you want to get to, and the staff grind it down. But in my mind, I think we need to maybe step back from that approach, and it's a little closer to what Councillor Gregg was talking about. What services does our community want and need to remain a thriving community? And what's that cost? And irrespective of what the percentage is, if the community wants and needs these services, then the percentage doesn't matter. This is what it's going to cost, and you either pay it or you don't. And And I guess it's always a dangerous thing to think that way, maybe, or even just the percentage thing too. But I think we need to be mindful of that, you know, because our community is multifaceted, of course. There are a widespread of wants and needs, but I think we have to keep that in mind. We can't just focus on a percentage because a number is just a number. Councillor Kentner. You're muted, Ross.
Sorry.
There you
Thank
go.
you. Thank you, Mr. Warden. I just very quickly, you know, we've all seen this coming for a long time, really. And it's not a surprise, but the numbers are shocking. I think last year we started off, we needed to cut 6% in half or something like that. And I just think that, yeah, it's not going to be business as usual. And I think we'd be very well advised to keep working on this and as smartly as we can. And let's be part of the solution, not part of the problem. Thank you.
Thank you, Ross. Any other questions or discussion? Okay, well, oh, Councillor Mackey.
Thanks, Mr. Warden, and good morning, everyone. You know, really interesting, all the discussion, and the county certainly does provide a wide array of services. And as Councillor Greg alluded to, you know, throughout the year, it's 0.5% here, 0.5% there, all valuable programs. But I think, as Councillor Boddy mentioned, it is time for us to look at what we have to do and the additional things that are the nice add-ons. Unfortunately, with numbers like this, some of these additional programs we really have to take a hard look at. So I would welcome an opportunity to go into closed session and have a thorough discussion with staff on, you know, and other council members on those services that we don't necessarily have to look after. We have no control over our roads and our bridges. We have no control over, you know, long-term care, but there are a lot of other areas that we do have some control over. And not that they're not valuable services, but they're not essential services. So we have essential services that we're required to do. We need to look at the non-essential services, unfortunately. Thank you.
Thank you, Scott. Anyone else? Well, I think we can agree that it's not going to get any easier going ahead. So I'm also hearing that council would like to have another meeting and staff would bring back what they've heard here today. So are we done for today, at least? Certainly, as I say, there's a lot of work ahead of us. Kim, do you have any parting words or clarification of what you've heard today?
No, I thank you all for your attention and for your honesty. We want to work with you and get to the place that everyone feels that is a solid place to move forward from. So we will put together a meeting, probably maybe on the 3rd of November or thereabouts. We'll look for a place and we'll get some options together. We'll put our heads together as the departments and see what we can come forward with. The more information people have, the perhaps that might make it a little easier to make a difficult decision. So thank you again.
Very good. Thank you, Kim. So with that, I'll ask for a motion to adjourn. Councillor Patterson, second by Councillor McKay. All those in favor? Is anyone opposed? No one's opposed. Very good. We stand adjourned. We look forward to continued discussion on this important item. Thank you all. Take care.
I know.